My wife cheated on me with our neighbor, then lost $250, $0 in a shady investment, and now she's trying to legally claim half of our $600, $0 house, and I just found out she's been secretly planning to sell the family farm behind my back. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to catch his wife cheating on him. Honestly, I always believed in the idea of sticking it out through thick and thin, that marriage was about loyalty and trust. But that belief got shattered in one afternoon that started like any other, and by the end of it, I was staring at a mountain of lies, betrayal, and a future I didn't recognize anymore. Her name. We've been married for 10 years. When we first got together, she was the most vibrant, confident woman I'd ever known. She was funny, smart, and she knew exactly how to push all my buttons in a good way. We built a life together, bought a house in the suburbs, and for a while I thought we had everything figured out. But somewhere along the way, I started noticing subtle changes in her behavior: longer work hours, secretive phone calls, quick replies when I asked about her day. Nothing concrete, just little things that made me uneasy. Then came the signs I couldn't ignore. She started staying late at work more often, claiming she had projects, meetings, or client dinners. Her phone became a fortress. She'd take calls in the bathroom, whispering and texting in a way that made me suspicious. I'd catch her sneaking around, hiding her phone screen when I entered the room. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but my gut told me something was off. One night I decided to do a little digging. I wasn't proud of it, but I wanted the truth. I checked her texts and emails when she wasn't around. That's when I saw the messages. It was a series of texts between her and our neighbor, Jake. They were flirty, suggestive, and way too intimate for just neighbors. The way she called him babe and joked about meeting up later made my stomach turn. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. How long had this been going on? How could she betray me like this? I remember the night I found the messages like it was yesterday. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone when I saw a recent text exchange. They were talking about meeting up at Jake's house after she finished her shift at work. My world started spinning. I couldn't believe it. My wife was cheating on me with the guy next door, our neighbor, Jake. I felt a mix of rage, heartbreak, and disbelief. How could she do this? After all these years, after everything we built? I didn't confront her right away. I needed to think, to process what I'd found. But the anger simmered beneath the surface. The next day I watched her carefully, looking for any signs of guilt or remorse. Instead, she acted like everything was fine, dismissing my questions, accusing me of mistrusting her, telling me I was overreacting. That's classic. She always spun her lies with a bitchy smirk, pretending to be the victim. She told me I was paranoid, that I was imagining things, but I knew better. The betrayal didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, I started digging into her finances. That's when I uncovered even more shocking stuff. Had been secretly investing in shady schemes, high-risk, high-reward stuff that I never approved. She lost $250, $0 in some dubious investment. She claimed it was just bad luck, but I knew better. She'd been hiding money, lying about her spending, and trying to cover her tracks. It was like peeling back layers of a lie that only got darker. And then I found out she was planning to sell the family farm behind my back. The farm, been in my family for generations. It's not just land, it's part of who I am. I never thought she'd try to get rid of it without telling me. When I confronted her, she said she was considering options, that she was thinking about her future. But I knew she was planning something more sinister, selling behind my back, cashing out, leaving me with nothing but memories. I was overwhelmed. The betrayal felt like a punch to the chest every day. My wife, the woman I loved and trusted, was sleeping with our neighbor, losing our money in shady investments, and plotting to sell the only thing I had left, the farm. It was too much to process all at once, but I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let her get away with this, not without a fight. So I started planning my revenge, even if I didn't have all the pieces yet. I just knew I had to take control of my life again. The more I dug into her affairs, literally and figuratively, the more I realized I was standing on a sinking ship. I couldn't believe I had missed all the warning signs for so long. bitchy attitude when I questioned her, the way she dismissed my concerns, the secretive way she handled her phone, everything pointed to a woman who had been planning her escape for months. And the worst part, I was just starting to see how deep her lies went. After discovering her affair with Jake, I started paying closer attention to her movements. I'd catch her sneaking out late at night, sometimes with her purse, sometimes just in her pajamas. She'd come back looking flushed, acting like she hadn't been anywhere. I kept my cool, but my mind was racing. I knew I had to gather proof, so I installed a few discreet cameras around the house, especially near the front door and her phone charging station. I'd be lying if I said I was hopping to catch her red-handed again. One evening, I was sitting in the living room when I saw her slip out the front door with her purse. I followed her at a distance, pretending to be busy in the garage. She got into Jake's truck and I watched her drive off into the night. That was the moment I decided to confront her head-on. I wasn't going to let her keep lying and sneaking around. I wanted to hear her explain herself, if she could. The confrontation was brutal. I waited until she got home, then blocked her in the driveway. She rolled her eyes when she saw me standing there, arms crossed, looking pissed. "What do you want?" she snapped, trying to brush past me. I told her I knew everything about her affair with Jake, her secret investments, her plans to sell the farm. Her face twisted into a bitchy sneer. She looked like she didn't care, like I was wasting my breath. She spun her usual lies, claiming I was paranoid, that it was all a misunderstanding, that Jake was just a friend. She told me I was overreacting, that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. Her tone was condescending, full of that bitchy edge she always used when she thought she was smarter than me, but I wasn't buying it. I had proof and I was ready to use it. The emotional impact hit me hard. I felt humiliated, betrayed, and furious all at once. I couldn't believe I had trusted her for so long, only to find out she'd been screwing around with our neighbor, lying about her money, and scheming to get rid of the farm. It was like my entire life was a lie. I started questioning everything: our marriage, her love, my own judgment. How could someone I loved so much turn into this manipulative, selfish woman? I remember sitting alone in the dark that night, staring at the ceiling, trying to piece everything together. I was angry at her, yes, but also angry at myself for not seeing it sooner. I kept replaying the moments I missed, the signs I ignored. I felt a deep sadness, too, because despite everything, I still loved her. But love wasn't enough anymore, not when betrayal was so deep. In that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. I decided I'd gather all the evidence I could, get legal advice about the house and the farm, and plan my next move carefully. I wasn't going to be the fool who got played. She thought she was smart, that she could manipulate her way out of this mess. But I was done being naive. I'd fight for what's mine: my home, my family's legacy, and my dignity. That night, I started drafting a plan. I knew she'd try to deny everything, spin her lies, and maybe even threaten me with divorce or some false accusations. But I had enough dirt on her now to make her regret ever crossing me. I wasn't just going to confront her, I was going to take back control. No more secrets, no more lies. I'd expose her for who she really was, and I'd make sure she paid for what she did, every last bit of it. The next few days were a blur of planning and gathering evidence. I couldn't sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, that bitchy smirk she always wore when she thought she was winning. But I knew I had to stay calm, stay methodical. This wasn't about impulsive rage. It was about justice, about making sure she paid for the damage she'd caused. I started by hiring a private investigator. It wasn't cheap, but I needed someone who could confirm her affair with Jake and dig into her financials better than I could. While he was on the case, I did my own digging into the shady investments she'd made behind my back. I found bank statements, emails, and receipts that proved she'd been funneling money into some sketchy schemes. High-risk investments with no regulation, no transparency. She'd lost $250,000, and she'd been lying about it the whole time. That was a big piece of leverage I could use. Meanwhile, was still acting like she was queen of the world. She continued with her bitchy attitude, throwing fits when I questioned her about the farm or her finances. She'd tell me I was paranoid, accuse me of stalking her or invading her privacy. But I had enough now. I had her texts, her emails, her financial records. I wasn't going to let her keep pretending she was innocent. I knew she was planning something, probably to sell the farm behind my back, just like I suspected. One afternoon, I caught her in a lie I couldn't ignore anymore. She told me she was meeting her sister for brunch, just a casual catch-up, but I saw her parking at Jake's house again. I followed her, parked a few streets away, and watched her go inside. That was the final nail in the coffin. I took photos, recorded her leaving, and saved everything as evidence. I felt a mix of disgust and relief. Now I had her dead to rights. I also discovered she'd been secretly talking to a lawyer about splitting the house. She was trying to claim half of our $600, $0 property, even though we'd agreed on a prenup when we married. That was her way of trying to take everything I had built. I was furious. I knew I had to act fast before she could finalize anything. I contacted my own lawyer, laid out all the evidence, and started preparing for the legal fight. Throughout all this, kept up her act of being the victim. She'd scream, cry, accuse me of being controlling. She'd call me paranoid or say I was just jealous. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I knew her game. She was a manipulative, bitchy woman who thought she could get away with anything, and I was done being her puppet. One night I sat her down, calm but firm, and told her I knew everything. About the affair, the shady investments, the plan to sell the farm. Her face went pale, and for the first time I saw a flicker of genuine fear. She stammered, trying to deny it all, but I had the proof. I laid it all out: texts, emails, financial records, the photos. I told her I was going to take her to court, that she wasn't getting a dime of the house or the farm unless she could prove she was innocent. She looked like she was about to lose her shit, but I didn't care. That night, I felt a strange mixture of relief and exhaustion. I'd taken control of the situation, but I knew this wasn't over. She was dangerous, cunning, and she wouldn't go down without a fight. Still, I'd made my move. I was done being the naive husband who trusted her blindly. Now I was the man fighting for what's rightfully mine, and I was ready to see this thing through, no matter how messy or ugly it got. I just kept telling myself, this is only the beginning. The legal battle started pretty much immediately after I handed over all the evidence to my lawyer. Of course, didn't take it well. She went into full bitch mode, throwing tantrums, screaming about how I was ruining her life, how she deserved half the house because she was contributing all these years, even though she'd been secretly planning to sell the farm behind my back. Her tears and accusations were just a distraction. I knew the truth was out now, and I wasn't going to back down. The lawyer told me to prepare for a long fight, was trying to claim half of the house, even though we had a prenup, and I had the evidence that she'd been planning to sell the farm for months. The shady investments she'd made, she'd hidden her losses, lied about her spending, and tried to get me to sign papers that would give her access to the farm's sale proceeds. I was furious. Not just because she was cheating and lying, but because she was trying to wipe out my family legacy. She kept up her act of innocence, but it was thin. She'd try to manipulate the situation, claiming I was paranoid or jealous. She even accused me of spying on her, which was laughable because I'd only done what I needed to protect myself. I had to stay calm, keep my emotions in check, and let the legal process do its thing. But inside, I was boiling. I wanted to see her get what she deserved. Meanwhile, I started taking steps to secure the farm and the house. I contacted a real estate appraiser and an inspector to evaluate everything. I wanted to make sure I had a solid case, proof of ownership, the value of the property, and her plans to sell without my consent. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became that she'd been planning this for months. She'd even gone as far as talking to shady investors, trying to find buyers for the farm, all behind my back. The emotional toll was heavy. Every day I felt betrayed, angry, and exhausted. I'd catch myself staring at the house, remembering all the good times we had and feeling a deep sense of loss. But I also knew I couldn't let her win. I had to fight for what was rightfully mine. My pride, my family's legacy, everything was on the line. I couldn't be the fool who let her walk away with everything. The worst part was seeing her bitchy attitude turn into desperation. She started throwing more fits, accusing me of ruining her life, trying to manipulate the court with tears and false stories. She'd scream about how I was controlling, how I was trying to take everything from her. But I knew better. I had the evidence, her lies, her secret plans, her financial misconduct. I was ready to take her down. One day she stormed into my office crying, demanding I drop the case, claiming I was ruining the family, ruining her life. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "You've been caught. You lied, cheated, and tried to steal from me and our family. I'm doing what I have to do to protect what's mine." That shut her up for a moment, but I could see the bitchy smirk lurking beneath her tears. She thought she could manipulate her way out of this. She was wrong. I also learned. She'd been secretly talking to a divorce lawyer, trying to find ways to get around the prenup and walk away with half the house. That only made me more determined. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I had the evidence, the legal backing, and the will to fight. I knew she'd try to drag this out, maybe even try to threaten me or make false accusations, but I was prepared for that. The day finally came when the court scheduled a hearing. I was nervous, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. I'd done everything I could, gathered all the evidence, and prepared my case. I looked at sitting there, bitchy as ever, trying to act like she was the victim. But I knew the truth. I knew she was the manipulative, selfish woman who betrayed everything we had. As I sat there waiting for my turn, I realized how much I'd changed. I'd gone from a naive husband trusting his wife blindly to a man fighting tooth and nail for what's his. I learned that sometimes love isn't enough. And that betrayal can come from the people you least expect. But I also learned that justice, if you're willing to fight for it, can be achieved. I was ready for whatever came next, whether I won or lost. I just knew I wouldn't go down without a fight. The court hearing was a whirlwind. Showed up with her usual bitchy attitude, trying to act like she was the victim, crying crocodile tears and twisting her face into a pout whenever the judge looked her way. She tried to argue her case, claiming she was entitled to half the house because she'd contributed all these years and that I was trying to control her. I just sat there, stone-faced, knowing that I had all the evidence stacked against her. My lawyer laid out everything. The texts, the emails, the financial records, even the photos of her sneaking out to Jake's house. We proved she'd been planning to sell the farm for months, behind my back, and that she'd lost $250,000 in shady investments she'd hidden from me. The judge listened carefully, flipping through the documents, and I could see the wheels turning in his head. I knew this wasn't going to be easy, but I also knew I had a strong case. His lawyer tried to argue that the prenup was invalid, that she deserved half because she was married to me for so long, and that her contributions to the household should be recognized. But we shot down every point. I explained how she'd been secretly planning to sell the farm, how she'd lied about her investments, and how she'd been unfaithful. I could see her biting her lip, trying to hold back her bitchy smirk, knowing she was losing ground. The judge finally asked for a recess to review the evidence. During that break, I felt a weird mix of relief and anxiety. I'd fought tooth and nail, and I knew I'd done everything I could. But I also knew was cunning, and she might try to pull some last-minute tricks. Still, I was confident that justice was on my side. When we returned to the courtroom, the judge announced his decision. He ruled that was not entitled to half the house, citing the prenup and her proven deceit and betrayal. He also ordered her to pay back the money she'd lost in the shady investments, money that she'd hidden from me and tried to conceal. As the judge's words sank in, Bitchy crumbled for a moment. Her eyes widened, her mouth opened to argue, but she knew she'd lost. I felt a strange mixture of vindication and exhaustion. All the months of betrayal, lies, and manipulation had finally been exposed. The court's decision was clear. She wouldn't get the farm or the house, and she was responsible for her financial mess. It was a huge win for me, but it also meant I had to face the reality of moving on without her. After the hearing, stormed out of the courtroom, still trying to play the victim, but her bitchy attitude was replaced with pure rage. I stayed behind, talking to my lawyer about the next steps. We'd start the process of reclaiming the farm, clearing her name from the legal documents and making sure she couldn't come back and try to take more. That night, I sat alone in the house, feeling drained but relieved. I'd fought for what was mine and I'd won. at least legally. But inside, I was still processing everything. The betrayal cut deep, and I knew it would take time to heal. Still, I had learned a lot from this mess. Trust is fragile, and sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who hurt you the most. I'd never let my guard down that way again. I looked around the empty house and thought about the future. I'd rebuild, I'd recover. Was gone from my life now, and honestly, I didn't feel much sadness about it. What I felt was a grim satisfaction. Justice, finally served. I was ready to start over, to protect what mattered most, and to make sure I never got like this again. Because at the end of the day, no matter how much love you give, some people just aren't worth it. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply reclaiming what's rightfully yours. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into rebuilding what was left of my life. The farm, my home, the money, everything I'd fought so hard to protect was finally secure. I cut all ties with completely. She tried to reach out a few times, sending angry texts and playing the victim, but I didn't bother responding. I knew her game. She was good at manipulating, but I'd seen through her from the start. There was no point in giving her the satisfaction of a reaction. Living alone now, I had plenty of time to reflect. I realized how much I'd let her manipulate me, trusting her blindly, ignoring the warning signs, convincing myself that she loved me. But betrayal doesn't just hurt, it teaches you who people really are. I learned that sometimes you have to fight for yourself, even when it means tearing down years of illusions. I also learned that revenge, when justified, isn't about petty retaliation but about reclaiming your dignity and setting things right. The experience left a scar, no doubt, but it also made me stronger. I now approach relationships differently, more cautious, more aware. I won't be again. I've learned that some people are just selfish, manipulative, and willing to destroy everything to get what they want. And I've learned that, no matter how deep the betrayal, you can come out on the other side, wiser, tougher, and ready to rebuild. Looking back, I don't regret fighting for what's mine. I don't regret exposing her lies or standing my ground in court. It was messy, painful, and exhausting, but it was necessary. I realized that sometimes the only way to truly move on is to face the darkness head-on, to confront the lies, and to take back control. That's what I did, and honestly, I feel a lot better now. I want anyone reading this who's going through something similar to know this: trust your instincts. Don't ignore the signs. If you suspect betrayal, investigate carefully but thoroughly. And when the truth comes out, don't be afraid to fight for what's yours. Revenge isn't about hurting the other person. It's about reclaiming your life, your dignity, and your peace of mind. I've learned that love isn't enough to keep a marriage afloat if there's betrayal at its core. Sometimes you have to walk away, even if it hurts, because staying means accepting more lies, more manipulation, and more pain. And that's something I refuse to do anymore. I've found my strength in this chaos, and I'm finally ready to move forward, free from the shadows of betrayal. That's all I can say. If you're in a similar situation, remember, you're not alone. Trust yourself, fight for your happiness, and never let anyone take what's yours without a fight. Because in the end, justice is worth every ounce of the struggle.